Before we start the show, we'd like to thank our sponsors for 2025. SEBA, the Southeastern Beefmaster Breeders Association. Jones Beefmasters, Mr. Clark Jones of Savannah, Tennessee. Valor Cattle Company with Jordan Taylor in Hahira, Georgia. Rockin' RB Cattle Company, Crosby, Texas. Beef, the Beefmaster Education Endowment Fund. Our host, JCS Farms Beefmasters, Jared Strickland, Savannah, Tennessee. Emmons Ranch Beefmasters, Fairfield, Texas. Cottage Farms Beefmasters, Jackson, Tennessee. Lissy's Beefmasters, Stockdale, Texas. C&M Ranches, Kershaw, South Carolina. Our other host, G&M Cattle Company, Josh Morrison, Taylorsville, North Carolina. And Sea Shepherd Beefmasters, McAllen, Texas. Thank you for all your support. We couldn't do it without you. Welcome to Beefmaster Banner. We're your hosts, Josh Morrison, Jared Strickland. How's it going, Jared?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
Glad y'all, really glad y'all got through those storms okay, because those got pretty rough, didn't they?
Oh yeah, we're definitely fortunate. We didn't have too much action around the house, but we definitely stayed up all night watching it get close and stuff, and uh, had some had a friend lose their house over town about 30 minutes from us, so that whole town's in pretty bad shape. But obviously there's some. I don't think they've got some final numbers, but there were some fatalities. So definitely be thinking about some of these families and these storms all over the southeast and Tennessee, Arkansas, and some other places. Sounds like we got a few more days of it too. So
Oh man. And I mean some massive tornadoes. It was I don't I'm careful to use the word impressive because that's not what I mean by that, but I mean just massive tornadoes that were ripping through there. And I know you told me you and Mr. Clark, I talked to him this morning, checked on him, and y'all said that Savannah was good, but about 30 minutes west it was like the whole world just disappeared.
yeah, they got some pretty bad spots over there. Bad thing about it is a couple of years ago they was some that come through kind of in the same area. So I'm not 100% sure if some of the same people got hit again, but it was real close. So
Man.
uh,
Well, for
uh,
sure, we all need to keep them in our prayers because some people's lost everything, and I know it happens all over the United States all year long, but this was just one of those. Um, this was one of those storms that you just don't see very often. I mean, I think the Torcon or whatever they call it on the Weather Channel was almost a 10 in
yeah,
certain
it
areas,
was
and they say they never see that.
yeah, it was before we checked it yesterday afternoon, and I think the section next to us was a 9 or 10, pretty much the highest level, and we were in the sevens, five and seven, kind of in between there. And man, they had her down pretty close because I mean it by yesterday afternoon it was firing up on all cylinders. So
Yeah, and that's kind of the I say the bad part about springtime coming. You got the weather changing, and man, you just never know where those things might fire off. And thankfully, we don't see. We get some warnings, some watches around here throughout the spring, but and we've had a couple times where it's hit over the years, but thankfully I'm thinking hopefully the mountains is what's helping us a lot because we're right here in the foothills, and um, that always seems to kind of cut some of the storms off a little bit, but it can get pretty wild. And tonight we're going to talk about a few different things, but having a disaster plan, is something that, and some people may be shaking their head wondering why we're talking about this on a cattle podcast, it all goes hand in hand.
it's super relevant. And I've had, we just talk about wanting to talk, something about I'll have an idea for the podcast. And we're kind of running last minute because I've been out of internet since yesterday or whatever. So we had to wait till the last minute to get I got it restored or whatever. But uh, anyway, it's something to think about. It's been on my mind a lot today after talking and with other folks about and having things happen in the past. And maybe it's some of my extension background too, where we get calls on a lot of things. But It's something that we don't ever really want to think about because we don't want to think about it happening. But I think it's something that every farmer or rancher, needs to be put in the back of their mind. And I'll be honest with you, I think I need to do this myself for my own farm, but I think you need to have a plan, and it wouldn't hurt to have something written down, I think, because when the
Oh,
time comes, I mean, and when I mean by a plan, I'm talking about having figure out what your immediate needs could be, depending on, you know, and it's kind of neat because it's all kind of coming together with me because I'm working on my master's and hopefully I'll have that thing licked by the end of the spring. But I'm in a risk assessment plan, or it's like we're doing risk assessments or whatever, and some of this is with agriculture and things like that. So it's on my mind a lot lately because I'm actually learning more about it. But I think it's something that we all need to be doing, write down what it is, look at what kind of risk you have. And maybe I know we've had tornadoes and severe weather, but I'm not talking about just tornadoes. What about drought? What about flooding? What about even market risk? Things that could put you in a bind with your farm and family financially or physically or things like that. And find out what those things could be. If you're close to a creek or a river, could you have a flooding event that washes part of your farm away, or the cattle, the equipment, things like that? Uh, you never can foresee those things, but if you kind of have an idea uh, what you could be open to as far as a tornado. Let's say if a tornado comes through your farm, tears your fences down, the cattle are scattered, who you gonna call? Who do you think who can you call immediately that can help you uh, gather those cattle, help you fix those fences, or have a place if you can't do that, it's who can you call that hopefully and not have just one person, have several because they could be affected as well. So who can you call and say, hey, I got 30 head of cattle on the loose. When you catch them, and can I store them at your place or something, or and have that, and you're playing with the other farmers where you swap it up. So that's kind of my thing is in your plan, make sure you're communicating with these people that y'all can work together. Because when disaster strikes, it's always a panic and a rush. But if you've already thought these things through, it may relieve some of that panic in the beginning. And I know I say this as just talking about it, but it's something to think about.
well,
Something I want to think about more. I mean, I've been sitting here at my house this afternoon, watching the storms go by. And I'm sitting there thinking, I got some cattle behind the house here. What would happen if tornado blow through and I'm out here in the yard trying to get cattle up and ain't got nowhere to put them? I mean, so it's been on my mind. So it's something we all should think about.
yeah, I mean, and you go all the way back to Helene. We're just 6 months past that, and you had farmers over here, ranchers that had cattle, and they were scattered everywhere. Well, they didn't. I would say I would venture to guess none of them had a disaster plan because we've never seen anything like it before. The flooding, the mudslides, and that's when your community comes together. But the immediate needs. Do I have a piece of equipment that if a barn falls and I got a cow under it that I need to get out, or I mean a tree falls somewhere that the cows can't get over to get to safety if it's flooding. I mean, there's all kind of things. So a piece of equipment, whether it be a tractor, a track loader, a extra whatever it is, even if it's old, it's nice to have something like that because, or at least like you said, know somebody that's got one that wasn't affected that you can get a hold of pretty quick, because a lot of times things happen, and they happen. They're not going to happen when you're prepared for them. They're going to happen when you least expect them,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's where that comes into play. And I mean, then you look into insurance, and FSA, things like that, and I mean, this is real stuff that yeah, it costs money, but if you don't have it, how are as cattlemen and cattlewomen, how are we always the only way we're going to make money is sell cattle. If a disaster strikes and your cows are not there anymore, you need an insurance plan to help recoup that, or it's not going to be good.
yeah. So I mean, like you said, insurance is something to think about. Or even obviously with home insurance, even farm equipment, things like that, that, maybe reevaluate those things if you haven't in a while. Reevaluate your house. Obviously house prices have really increased in the last, 3, 4, 5 years. So make sure you got enough insurance on that. Same with your farm equipment, your buildings. It costs way more money to build a barn back now than it did 5 years ago or something like that. So look at those policies. That way, if something does happen, you're going to have the coverage you need to get back to where you were. So that's the thing to think about. And also liability insurance. What if some cattle get out and somebody runs them over? Unfortunately, I had this experience back in the this time. Well, it's about this time last year actually, uh, and it was not very good. I mean, it was very uh, unnerving. Somebody run over one of our heifers, and you lose the heifer. The people were, you know tear up their vehicle and things like that. Who's liable and all these things. So fortunately for us, we have carried liability insurance, and that was covered. And so think about that. And we was talking about FSA or Farm Service Agency. I know it's hard to think about in the moment, but having records of what you got, things like that, because there are assistants out there in a big disaster. So if something is going on, uh, take pictures. I know it's hard to think about it in the moment, but take pictures and document what's going on. If you've got cattle in floodwater and you can take pictures of them or before they go, or whatever, if they're after the fact, document what happened. That way you can take it up there to the FSA office and hopefully get a claim on that. So like I said, we don't really want to harp on it too much because it's not that great of a subject, but it's something to think about, talk about, and always be willing to help farmers, and they'll be willing to help you, and your neighbors, and be neighborly, and because you never know uh, when, and like I said, you'll never fully be prepared for an emergency or disaster because everything's always unique. But thinking about these things beforehand I think, is a good idea to help you in that realm. And hopefully it never happens. You're just ready to go in case it does.
Yeah, yeah. And Jared, can you expand a little bit? And I mean, you don't have to go into detail, but for those, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't know what Farm Service Agency is or does. Can you expand a little bit on like what they're there for, how to get in touch with them, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's through USDA, or the United States Department of Agriculture. They got the Farm Service Division. They've got the Natural Resources Division and all that. But typically, Farm Service agencies will work with your farming, so your row crops and your cattle and things like that. Uh, they have some they have some programs. So, like if you have a disaster, uh, you can get some funding for that. Typically, it has to be a declaration in your county or area. Uh, they may be different for certain areas, but just be mindful of that. But at the same time, a lot of times they want documentation of either what you had beforehand or the document, like say if it's a disaster and it tears up all your fencing and all this, and there's a declaration in your area, you might can get some help with that. But you would need to have documented how much fence you had and all these things, or document what's tore up. Same with your cattle. If you have a natural disaster and you get a lot of cattle are killed or something, they got some claims. Now, it's not going to recover the whole cost of your cattle, but at least it could help. So
Well,
you
and that's
need to know how many cattle you had, and things like that. So the best way to document that is if you ever do a preg check in the spring or something like that, make sure to do all your tag numbers, write it all down, have a vet sign it or something like that, or somebody that's helping you with that service. Uh, or even if you do it yourself, just have some type of documentation of what you had. And you know, I'm the world's we're all the world's worst sometimes about keeping up with paperwork, but that's something that could help you.
yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, that's something, that that's just another tool in the toolbox to keep is that FSA because you never know when you may need it, when it may come in handy. I mean, you could ask for it, and the worst thing they can tell you is no. So, I mean,
Yep.
that's
Yeah,
what I
you
always
could,
tell people: just throw it out there. The worst thing they're going to tell you is no. I mean,
and kind of expanding on that, just I didn't want to get too far away, but apologize for my throat. I had a scope done today.
oh no, yeah,
So,
I remember you telling me
so,
that.
so anyway, I'm kind of hoarse. But anyway, uh, make sure if you haven't, and especially if you're a new farmer, rancher, make sure you go by there and get in the system because it's a lot easier to get that assistance if you're already in there with a farm number. You've done your crop assessments and things like that. In case you do have a drought assistance or things like that, it's a lot easier to have that done when you're already in that system. So think about that if you haven't ever done that. Uh, Especially with the last few years, there's been drought payments across the country pretty well. So I would make sure you're doing that.
Well, that's something that I need to look into because I've never done it. Didn't know it was there. Never done it. So I need to go. I need to go get put in the system if I'm not ready.
Yeah, so just a quick example. So I know if you're monitoring drought situation, like we call it a D2, D3, D4 kind of situation. If you look at the drought monitor, uh, a lot of times if there's so many weeks in D3, it triggers a payment as far as the range of forage land deal.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's something to think about. That goes by how many acres you have in forage, uh, and then or number of head of cattle. If it's below your they do it by the acreage, but you can do it by the head too. It's just they got some equations for that. D4 is like an automatic payment on that too, so that's when it gets to extreme. I don't know. I'd have to think. I think D3 has to be the trigger point, uh, or there may be so many weeks in D2, but it'd be several. Like 2 months in D2 or something like that to get a
And
trigger payment on that.
do you have to send in for that, or does that just automatically trigger
So
if
you,
you're in the
you
system?
gotta, yeah, if you're in the system and if you've done a crop report, yes, it automatic triggers.
Okay.
So then you would go file the paperwork, claim the loss. You have to go claim the loss at the office to get
Okay.
it.
Okay.
But uh, but if you've already in the system and because you got to have to claim a loss, it has to be your farm, whether it be rented on or whatever. But it has to be you have to be filing crop reports on that.
Okay. Well, that's good to
So
know. I mean, and that's an important fact that I'm gonna venture to guess a lot of people probably don't know. I know I didn't, so that's good to know. But I'm gonna at least go get set up in their system. I mean,
and like on a trying to think back, we actually triggered a payment this past year. I think we were a D3 for a certain amount of time. So they do it by stages. So like a D3 or whatever will be 3X. So I think some of those payments end up being like $50, $60 a head uh, on those cattle. And I think you has to be like 2 or 3 acres, something like that. Depending on your area, uh, they have a ratio for that. But you could end up being a couple $1,000s.
it could potentially help a lot. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, especially if it's a year that is a drought, like last year, you might have to buy some hay,
mm,
or things like that. Or have to do some reseeding or things like that. It could help with that.
yeah, absolutely. Something else you mentioned, help the other farmers around you. I mean, you may not be affected, but just like you, Jared, 30 miles down the road, you got a friend that was, and I know you already expressed to me that y'all were going to try to go down and help out there. I mean, you know, I don't care what breed they are. I don't care what they do. At this point, this is human. It doesn't matter. Go help. Be a neighbor. Go help because you never know when you're going to need that help. For one,
And that's how it should work. That way it's like with anything, you help this time in case next time it may be for you. Hopefully you never have a problem and you just get to help somebody else. But
that's right.
uh, it's a tough situation.
That's right. You're
Uh,
exactly right. Um, and just a quick update for those that maybe didn't pay attention. The Commitment Excellence sale just ended as we were sitting here uh, talking. And anytime something like that happens, we'll try to update you, especially if there's something live going on while we're on there. That kind of gives us a little more something to talk about.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, like I said, looks like the prices were good. One of the next gen flushes brought over 10,000, so that's exciting right there in
Yeah, no, it
itself.
was a good sale. Good sale.
Some semen brought good, and some of the embryos brought real good. So that's always exciting.
Yep, some people are going to be excited to get some embryo babies on the ground.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
I always enjoyed watching these sales, and I'm glad that they get started doing all these genetic sales. You get to see a lot of cool things, and a lot of cool genetics get brought up.
well, it's cool to watch it online. It's cool to be able to sit at home and watch it online. Um, and that's the world we live in today. That's it's nice to be able to watch a live sale online, but it's nice to be able to watch those as well and bid from the comfort of your couch or your bed or wherever you want to be. One more sale before we jump into our next topic. Please make sure the JBBA, I guess it's like a fundraiser sales coming up, auction, April 9th and 10th. Make sure you at least get on there and support them. They've got some really nice stuff on there. I don't know. I went on there and looked the other day, and it's some really cool stuff. It's not just cow stuff. There's knives and ad placements in the catalogs. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. So it's really cool to see. And hopefully everybody will go support that for the JBBA.
Yeah, definitely get out and support the future of our breed.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing we're kind of getting down to the last couple here. The next thing we're going to talk about tonight would be, since we were talking about rain and disasters, we figure what better time than talk about fertilizer strategies, decisions. It's funny that we brought that up because Jared, you and I have been talking about that over the last couple of days.
Yeah,
You and I and
yeah.
Rodney, and
We y'all were putting out fertilizer about to, and we have been too. We've just kind of been discussing it back and forth. It's like, well, let's just talk about that on the podcast for a minute, because if we're talking about it, somebody else is talking about it.
absolutely. And I know
So,
we're a little bit late, but it's okay.
well, everybody's got their own timing as far as different times of the year and different ways of doing things. I get it. This gets brought up a lot this time of year for us. But we were talking about cost and things. You know, I wanted to mention for those that may want to learn more about fertilizer. Everybody may know everything about it. I don't know, but uh, when you're making a fertilizer blend, for whether it be pasture hay or whatever, kind of make sure to do a little studying on what you're putting out, understand what you're putting out. That way, over time, you may not be putting yourself in a bind, or you may be putting out too much to save. I mean, you may need to be saving money. Obviously, the best way to do that is a soil test. There's my extension plug. But you got to have a soil test to know what you got. But some general rules of thumb, we'll do that without being too technical, is, on hay ground, always remember when you harvest hay, you're taking those nutrients and moving them somewhere else unless you're feeding that hay back onto that hay ground. Typically, we're not doing that. So just remember, hay ground, it's a lot harder. You can kind of skimp on it if it's fine. What was it, 2 years ago? Well, yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, we've had really, really high fertilizer prices, which keeps people from putting it out. I understand I'm the same way. Uh, when it gets to $1,000 a ton, it's really expensive to put out, hard to put out much. But now fertilizer prices have come down to a more reasonable level. I'm not saying they're cheap by no means. They're still, especially DAP is still on up there pretty good. But potash and urea, ammonium sulfate has come down to a more reasonable level. Uh, so, really at prices right now, especially the way cattle prices are looking, now is not the time to be skipping too much on fertilizer, I don't think, as far as what you're going to get back out of it. Uh, Now, if you're selling hay or things like that, that may be a different decision. But uh, try not to skimp on your hay just because you're taking those nutrients off. Always remember when you're read the mix, nitrogen's first, phosphorus is in the middle, and that third number is potassium or potash. Uh, Everybody's got their own way of doing it. I like to look at units per acre. So, like if you're given a hay mixture and you're putting out 60 units of N and 30 units of P and 60 units of K. That's kind of how we start with that, but just a general rule of thumb, a lot of people in this country are starting to put out urea now instead of ammonia nitrate just because of regulations and stuff. But urea is going to have 40%, 46% nitrogen. So think about those calculations. So if for every 100 pounds, you're putting out 46 units if you put out 100 pounds to acre. So think about that. Uh, so if you want to put out 60 units, you need to be putting out more than 100 pounds to acre of the urea. DAP is a so you try to do these calculations. Most co-ops or wherever you're buying it from is going to help you with that calculation. So don't worry about it. But I thought we might cover it. DAP has 18% nitrogen in it. So if you put out your phosphorus in the form of DAP, you're going to be getting some units of nitrogen too. So think about that. Potash will be 60% of potassium. So every, say, 100 pounds of potash you put out, you get 60 units of potassium. Anyway, and if you need to put out sulfur, ammonium sulfate, something to look at too. You're going to get some units of nitrogen out of that too. So to get your sulfur. Anyway, something me and Josh was talking. I feel like I'm rambling now, but anyway,
Nah, go ahead.
me and Josh were talking the other day. Trying to if we wanted to cut some cost on some fields, say it's for particularly pasture ground. Uh, Pasture ground. If you've been fertilizing pasture ground or putting out chicken litter or things like that, I mean, to me, pasture is more of they cycle the nutrients better because obviously the cattle are harvesting the grass and then they'll put the manure back on the field. Now they don't do it evenly, so I'm not saying do this all the time, but if there's an opportunity, I said you may want to go. The real way to do it would be take your soil test and see what you got. But if there's opportunity to skip the pastures, would be where you might want to put out just some straight nitrogen for the spring to get you some growth there if you need to cut on your budget some.
Well, that's
Uh,
actually what we decided. You helped us decide that, and it's we actually ended up. So we were looking at the granulated form, but then a friend of mine that lives here close said, "Man, I've got a guy that comes and sprays liquid nitrogen, urea, and he actually mixes Grazon in with it. We spray Grazon every year for the weeds." And I thought, well, that's going to kill a whole bunch of tractor time, fuel time, and it honestly isn't any more than much. Well, I mean, it's probably a couple dollars more, but it's not a whole lot more once you put your time in it than just spraying it. Than just letting him do it. So that's what we've decided to do this year on the pasture ground, and we'll see how it goes. And um, I think it's really going to cut our costs a lot this year, which is kind of what we were trying to do, and still get some grass. But no, I think it's going to do great. But that's like you said, that's a good way to cut your costs too.
and if you're wanting to put out the herbicide, say as Grazon, Duracore, things like that, if you want to put that out through fertilized form, uh, I'd have to double check on the what you're talking about with the liquid. But on the granulated form, always remember that you're going to have to put out 200 pounds to the acre. So as a minimum, well, that's what they recommend. More is better because you got to think that herbicide gets coated onto that pellet, and the more pellets you got out there, the better coverage you're going to get. So at minimum, you're going to need 200 pounds. Well, if you want to do that on pasture, you're not going to be able to just put nitrogen. I mean, you could,
Right.
but I would not recommend it because then you'll be putting out, depending on what you're putting out, but you may be putting out way too much nitrogen at one time. Uh, so you may get a lot of leaching and things like that. So I would typically recommend if you need to fill up that space, I'll do potash because it's a cheaper product to put in with the mix. Uh, and you'll get the benefit of it as well. So that'd be something to look at. I really recommend that the Gray Zone and Duracore put out through fertilizer. I mean, it does a really good job. If you've got some tough weeds like dog fennel, especially from the southeast,
Oh my.
if you got dog fennel and plantain and some things like that are tough, I would go ahead and spray because the granulated fertilized impregnated there, it's not going to work as well. So that would be something to think about. But if you got some pretty straightforward looking weeds like hairy buttercup or things like that, go with it. Just go ahead with it to fertilize.
We deal with a lot of bull thistle around here too. That thistle with that purple flower on it.
Yep.
It
And it works really well on it. And you got to think about it, the way the plant's made, like that thistle you're talking about, it's in a rosette type form, so it's around, got a lot of flatness to it. So those pellets will actually stick to that plant, you know, and
so
it'll
it actually works good on it.
yeah, and then also it thistle absorbs well through the soil too. So but you take like dog fennel, it's a real upright plant. It
Mhm.
doesn't have much leaves to it, and it's a hardy plant to begin with. Same way with plantain, the leaves are kind of straight up. It doesn't absorb as well through the soil. So that's kind of how I look at your decision on whether or not using the impregnated fertilize with those because what kind of weeds you got. And this may be totally irrelevant topic for these people that's listening out west. I understand fertilize is maybe not something that y'all do as on a regular basis or something because of the acreage sizes. But here in the southeast, we get so much rain. Our soils are a lot older. They just don't hold nutrients as well. So fertilizing in the southeast is a must do kind of thing. So
Absolutely. And spraying is too. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it
oh
gets
yeah,
awful out our
yeah.
way for sure. That dog fennel, man, it get tall, and I mean tall.
In a hurry.
It's like walking through the dang Amazonian rainforest or
Yeah.
something. Out through there.
And it's crazy how when I was a kid that wasn't here, and up here where we're at, and it come along. Uh, I think the first time we saw it was after Hurricane Katrina, and I don't know if it happened to come up here then or something like that, or it just slowly evolved and come up this way or something. But uh, those things are pesky.
They'll do it. Good grief. Well, um, that's a good segue. What you just said there a minute ago. That may not be a good subject for them, but the next one is for everybody.
Yeah,
So we've been trying to hit some hot topics. Okay, we're not gonna stir the pot um any more than it has been because it's been a um I used the word dumpster fire the other day. I feel like that's still a good word for it.
yeah,
Of just hatefulness. And I mean, look, everybody, I'm just gonna say it. Here's my hot take. I get that everybody's got their own opinions, and that's perfectly fine. But why in the world do we have to trash each other to get just to say that we disagree with it?
yeah. I mean, that's kind of just we need to make sure what we put in public, people can see it, people in other breeds can see it. You know, uh, it's good to have discussion. It's good to disagree. We can just disagree civilly without trashing each other, I think. Trashing or bashing, whatever you want to call it. Uh, we're all in this together, even though we all have our own segment in the breed and we all do our own sales and we do all this together, but we're still a breed as a whole. And when that commercial buyer sitting there at this auction barn, they look at us all the same.
And we
So
still want our cattle to bring as much as they possibly can.
yeah, so
And it's
just just to
we've I'll just put out there we really talked hard about um really hammering on this topic. But at this present time, neither one of us, we both were in agreement that we didn't think it was the best of times to keep, n- not that we would purposely do it, but to keep stirring the pot because there's been very strong opinions, and that's a good thing to have as long as it's done respectfully. When it gets to where it's not respectful anymore, it's time for everybody to turn their computers off because as much as I'll, like to look at these pages on social media, they um can be very easy to start typing on your keyboard things. And there was a lot of personal things, brought in, and I'm gonna leave it at that as far as the comments. Everybody saw them, it wasn't no secret. But there's no reason that somebody, just be respectful to each other. We're all in the same breed. Whether you like black, red, horn, polled, paints, duns, I don't care what it is. Foundation, BBU, I don't care. Whatever it is. Just because we disagree doesn't mean that we have to tear each other down because in my opinion, and I'm sure most people would agree with this, if I was looking at getting in a breed and I was on social media just searching the name Beefmaster, and I saw some of the comments, and it's not just on one post; it's on lots of different things. I would have a hard time wanting to get in this breed. I'll just be honest with you. And I know it's everywhere, but when people can't even when they bash each other to the point of it's just plumb personal at that point, it's on the verge of ridiculous. I mean, that's the only word I can use for it. And there's no sense in it. Just like Taiji said a long time ago, we are all in the same boat. So grab an oar and paddle.
That's really the way to sum it up, I think.
And I'm just trying to be
So,
as nice as I
uh,
can, but it's just
and and take this as an well, this is our opinion too. So it's leave it at that, I guess. But so a lot of people may disagree with what we're saying now, but that those talk pages and forum pages or whatever, we really enjoy them. It's a good way to advertise your animals. It's a good way to get opinions of people of your animal and things like that. And let's use it to build our breed up and be helpful to one another, I guess would be the right way to put it, and
yeah,
and grow together. Uh, and I think that was kind of some of the gist of the topic was us all trying to help each other. And I think just to start, the best way to help each other is to all be respectful and let's work together to build our breed because it's going to take all of us, and it's going to take people coming into the breed to make it grow. If you're staying at the same membership level, we're not growing. So,
no,
I mean, we may sell more animals, but we really need more membership to grow. And the people in the breed make that possible. And we need to make sure we remember that the people in the breed make the breed as well as the cattle. So we need to make sure that people are thinking that when they first come in.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we preach all the time. We get it. Everybody's got their opinions, and a lot of it has to do with maybe where you live or what part of the country you live in, what cattle do better, and that's fine. But there's a way to say that, like we said already, there's a way to say that and still be respectful. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about helping your other farmers that were impacted by something. I mean, it's just being a good human at that point. It's just be helpful instead of trying to hurt the person that maybe asked a question or put their opinion on there, or whatever. But we've got to, yes, constructive criticism is fantastic if it's done in the right way and the right um mindset, maybe is the word I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
Intention.
Right spirit. Yeah, the right
Yeah.
intention. Um, but a lot of times this stuff can just go off the rails, and a lot of people forget that we're all in the same breed. We're all on the same team. We're all trying to make Beefmaster better. We just may have different ways of doing it, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to get as much as we possibly can because things cost too dang much anymore. And we're trying to get every penny we can out of our cattle. So I'll say it again: grab an oar and row.
Let's
And
get to rowing.
we may hit certain subjects every now and then, but right now that's where we're going to leave it.
Yeah. We're just gonna get to rowing. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
we're just going to get to rowing. That's what matters, and that's all that matters is doing it. So, anyways, I thought we
Leave
navigated
it.
that well.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
We'll see if we get stoned for that one, but it's all right. You know.
All right then.
Well, that was a quickly put together episode. We really hope everybody enjoys it. some of these actually end up people liking better than the ones we've had planned for 2 weeks. So hopefully you enjoy it, and we'll get back to I guess hopefully normal if y'all can get rid of some of those storms over that way.
That's right. I'm ready for them to leave.
And
At
we'll see
least,
everybody.
at least we're getting green grass out of it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But we hope you all have a great night. Please keep everybody in your thoughts and prayers that were affected by the storms, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.
See you.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to the Beefmaster Banner podcast. Please know that we are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and we are on YouTube. Just search Beefmaster Banner. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We love hearing from you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.